Welcome to the Fantasy Football Hub YouTube channel. Today I'm joined by Holly Shand to preview Game Week 9 and the upcoming game weeks and tell you guys, according to the data, who is predicted to score the most points in every position. Now Holly, just before we get into that and have a look firstly at the goalkeepers, I have to first say that we're very, very close on points, personally, me and you. And we're not on the exact same number of points, but we are just 1 point apart. And for those of you thinking out there in the comments that we might be members of the cartel because our points are so similar, I can assure you that we are, and that is why our points are so similar. So cry about it is all I can say. Holly, your quick thoughts on the FPL cartel chat. For those of you that don't know what's going on, it's a bit weird to explain, but yeah, quite a lot of content creators moved Saka out, and there was a little bit of a storm on socials that everyone was in some sort of content creators cartel league. And that we all had news, or content creators had news that Saka wasn't going to play. But yeah, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I was on Sky Sports News on Saturday morning, so I was like, head was in the game for that. So I obviously didn't get any news that may have been floating around and kept Saka in my team. I think if I'd have been streaming and maybe if I was at home and I was on my phone, maybe things may have been different. But yeah, I think there's quite a lot of us that have still got Saka that are now thinking what to do. But I think if I'd have sold Saka, I'd have got Foden anyway, and I wouldn't have been any better off, at least in the short term. So, yeah, one of those weeks, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, I was playing football and I didn't have access to my phone to get in the content creators chat and see that Saka wasn't going to play. So sadly, I still have Saka as well. But yeah, we're going to be interesting to look at him, particularly in the list of midfielders, and see where he potentially is. Tough fixtures. And actually, you know what? Should we just start on the midfielders? Because Saka is the main talking point. So we might as well. All right, here we go. On screen right now, you can see a list of the top 10 midfielders over the next 5 game weeks. That is their predicted points in order according to Fantasy Football Hub's data. And yeah, Holly, what immediately sticks out to you here?
Well, there's not been little change since last week, and Saka's still well up there. And this is why I've been patient with him personally, because it just feels like he is a long-term hold. He's the sort of player you want for the whole season. And if he's not available for Arsenal, you don't really want to be invested in Arsenal. I think that's what we saw in the Bournemouth game, didn't we? So, yeah, it seems fairly consistent at the moment. The likes of Salah, Palmer, Saka, the top performing midfielders in the game, the most expensive midfielders in the game, and probably at the end of the season, they'll still be the top performing midfielders in the game. We've still got that toss up, haven't we? If you want Salah, then you can't have a Palmer or a Saka in your team and a Haaland, which makes it difficult. You know, I'm still waiting for news on Saka and waiting to decide exactly what to do with him. I think the main change in this top 10 from last week is that Foden is nowhere to be seen. And he was, you know, the player that I would have likely replaced Saka with. So we're in that situation now where it's really difficult with Man City because they've got the fixtures, they haven't got the form. And where do you go for that second attacker if you've got Haaland? Is it viable to go with anyone? We could see De Bruyne back this week. Foden is still around and about, and, you know, security of minutes would see him well back into this top 10. I think the other change we saw was Maddison out, that surprise early substitution at half time. I think that Spurs formation hasn't really been working in some games with trying to fit in Johnson, Kulusevski and Maddison and still make sure they're retaining the ball and pushing forward. Even though Maddison had a good first half in terms of the number of chances he created, he was going into the game week probably my favourite Spurs midfielder, and now I don't think he would make the top 3. So some important information there. But we do see Brennan Johnson coming, who was a player we discussed last week, and you was a bit concerned about his absence from the top 10, and he's back in there, along with a couple of Manchester United midfielders as well.
Yeah, very interesting stuff. Yeah, it's interesting with Maddison. I didn't personally agree with the fact that Andrew was getting loads of sort of compliments for changing it at half time, because I thought that he should have changed it at half time against Brighton or very quickly after he saw that Brighton just had total control of that game, even though they were 2-0 up. He should have done it then. And then I think it was quite an obvious thing to do this week as well. I don't know if necessarily starting with that many attackers is good. We saw it even with the England team. Who was it against? Was it against Greece? Where Carsley just
Yeah.
played all the attackers. I know it's different, obviously, at international level, but you do need balance in a midfield, especially, of course, across a whole team. You can't just have 5, 6 attackers and expect to not concede, well, really control, but also obviously quite a lot of chances. And yeah, I guess it's tough on Maddison that he was the one that came out. It could have been really any of them, I suppose. Maybe might have thought it would have been Kulusevski, but he had a very good game. But yeah, the interesting thing to me is that Saka is still there, and maybe that's because in game week 12 the fixtures do turn again. Forest at home is perhaps not as easy as it sounds, but yeah, Forest at home, then West Ham away are two good fixtures, and it's kind of like, as you say, if you are thinking to keep him for the long term, like, yeah, realistically the season, do you want to get rid of him just for a few games when you know you're going to want him back, or are you then saying that actually, okay, let's go with Palmer, maybe even try and get Salah in? I know it's tough, but yeah. Salah's run does look quite good.
We're learning at the moment though, aren't we? Like this whole being able to carry more than 2 free transfers, like we're still trying to get to grips with what the threshold is for using a transfer. Like in the past, it's like the hokey cokey moves I've never been a fan of.
Yeah.
But I think if you're going into a situation this week where you've got 3, 4, 5 transfers, you could look to do that, especially if, there's, a strong suspicion that maybe Saka won't be involved again. Arsenal attack is still doing well. Obviously, the red card changed the game at the weekend, but you look at their other results in other games and they're still, creating plenty of chances, having loads of shots on goal. Saka central to that. And that's why I'm going to be reluctant to sell him.
Okay, let's move on to the defenders now. I kind of just want to talk about Arsenal defense in general. So just looking at defenders, and we'll come to keepers in a second, because that is also very interesting, just seeing how similar now quite a lot of the goalkeepers are, but we'll get to that. I think that's the main thing that stands out for me looking at defense now. It seems like the numbers are all sort of more squashed together than they have been in the past. Obviously, Saliba's not in this list because, well, actually, to be fair, he could still have been in it, but he's going to be banned for a game. Yeah, just Gabriel, not as massively clear as we once saw him. Gvardiol is at the top now. I think he might have been actually last week, if I can't remember correctly.
Was.
But yeah, started off very well, obviously, in the first of those 5 games. But yeah, Arsenal defenders just not doing as well.
No, and I know there's been a little bit of game time security that they've struggled with in recent weeks, which doesn't help the situation. Vardiol, obviously, City's fixtures still for the next 3 game weeks look great, and Vardiol has managed to get some attacking returns now as well. So I think the thing I found interesting here, though, was the fact that we've got 2 Liverpool defenders in the top 5. But significantly, I think we'd need to take note of the fact that Trent maybe isn't justifying his price tag at the moment. And there's a lot of managers wondering whether to sell Trent to maybe get to a Palmer in midfield, for example.
Yeah, exactly.
And that move definitely looks wise when you compare Trent to, his counterparts that are $1 million-ish cheaper and predicted to provide the same output over the next 5 game weeks. Rico Lewis is still in there as well, but I think I started the season with Vardiol, sold him for Lewis on wildcard, and since then it's Vardiol that's been tearing it up with the attacking returns. We've also got Manchester United again because they've got the fixtures starting to make some headway. And Rayan Aït-Nouri as well.
There he is. He is. The man that we're all excited for.
Yeah, he's a player that could easily come into my team this week because he's one of the most attacking defenders in the Premier League right now. He's playing in that wing-back role. So looking at Wolves fixtures, you expect some attacking returns over probably the next 8 game weeks. I think their fixture run lasts for. And any clean sheets that they get is a bonus. Obviously, they're not going to be very high on confidence defensively after a pretty horrible start to the season, not helped by, tough fixtures. But we're in the clear now with that.
Yeah, just looking at Aït-Nouri's sort of heat map across the season, it's obviously very, very advanced. But even just watching that City game, when he was popping up on like the right wing, I was just thinking this is such an Aït-Nouri thing to do. I mean, obviously it is calculated and planned by the manager because I don't think you just let your left back roam to right wing. But it was strange that even against Man City, Aït-Nouri was kind of allowed to to use his running power and get forward and try and create something on the counter. And they very, very nearly got something in that game. I think defensively they were very, very good. I think they were unlucky, to be honest, not to hold on to something in that game. But yeah, there we go. That is the defenders, and Trent is the one. Because of the Saka injury, I'm thinking personally to my team now. I'm thinking, because I was thinking like you, can you go Trent to 8 Nuri, looking at the predicted points, that looks, pretty sensible. And then with that money, upgrade a midfielder to Palmer, and then still have Saka, Palmer, and Haaland. But now it's just whether it's worth potentially holding off for maybe a couple of weeks until Saka's fixtures then get good again, and maybe you can just do Saka to Palmer now, and then do that Trent to 8 Nuri move a little bit later, and then get Saka back in. I don't know. That's a bit too team specific, but yeah, that's sort of the decision that it's going to be for me, I think, this week. All right, let's move on. Let's go to goalkeepers now before finishing with forwards. And as always, we are going to look at the Hub's AI team in this video. Don't worry, guys, but you thought we'd change up the order in this one. And yeah, what I was saying earlier is kind of looking at the fact that Raya isn't miles out ahead. I know he hasn't been miles ahead, and goalkeepers are never going to be like plus 5-6 points. But as a Flecken owner, once again, I'm pretty happy with Flecken since getting him in game week 6. Again, he's done very well ahead of Raya this week.
Yeah, we're still waiting for the Flecken clean sheets, aren't we? But if he can produce
a
4-pointer in a game,
why not? Yeah,
you'd absolutely take those points. And the more premium goalkeepers aren't necessarily justifying their price tag at the moment. Like City haven't kept a clean sheet since game week 1. I know since I doubled up on the Arsenal defence, they've not kept a clean sheet either. So it does make you think, is it worth it? When you see, it feels like every week or every other week, there's a goalkeeper that pops up with a 10-pointer or more. And it's never these premiums. It's the ones that, rack up the save points and keep a clean sheet and make a penalty save. And you're not necessarily getting that from these premiums. Again, you could probably make a goalkeeper move if you had a stack of transfers, which isn't something that we'd say in the past.
Yeah.
I think the only time that I've really made a goalkeeper transfer outside of a wild card before is for an injury, or if I've got 2 free transfers and no other issues. But now we can, save a few transfers. It may be that you do attack some fixture swings, looking at a Flecken, Pickford again in there, still looking strong as well.
Yeah, looking further down as well, Sells was the one this week.
Yeah,
that did really well compared to the others, I suppose. And yeah, Gian, who's going to be on tomorrow's video, has Sells. So I'm going to talk to him about obviously his rationale.
He'll be loving those late points.
Oh, exactly. 11 points is just exactly what you want from a goalkeeper. It doesn't happen too often, as you say, but he did play very well. And got all the bonus and multiple saves too. But yeah, it's just like, again, I guess we don't really fully know yet this season, but it's just whether a transfer, if you have a lot in up for you to use 4 or 5 or whatever, if one is worth it on a goalkeeper, I would suggest probably not just looking at the predicted points, but then maybe if you do want to make a big saving and then use that elsewhere, you could potentially drop from a Raya or an Edison to a Flecken, to a Sells, someone like that. Okay, let's finish things off with the forwards. What are your thoughts on Haaland in general? Blanking 3 times in a row. Now, I don't know if we've ever seen that before, but obviously he's still way out in front, and whatever really happens with him, he's still going to be out in front with predicted points, right? But has that come down a little bit? I think it was something like 40, 42 or something last week, so it has come down.
Yeah, and I think that gap to Salah's now only 2.6 points.
Yes, good point.
So, there'll be managers out there that don't own Haaland that have absolutely loved the last few game weeks because obviously Haaland's blanked and they've captained someone else because they don't own Haaland and probably got some captain returns while the rest of us have been playing boring and keeping it on him. I think, the lack of Kevin De Bruyne has been a big loss for City clearly in this period. And Haaland's not had any big chances on goal in those 3 game weeks either, which is a concern.
Ooh.
But, he can turn it on at any given moment, and Southampton at home is probably one of the best fixtures of the season for him. I think he's got 3 goals in 2 against them in the Premier League, so it's a decent return. It feels like a great fixture. I think if Haaland was coming into this game in form, then we'd be talking about triple captain.
Yeah.
So I've been told that someone behind the scenes at Hub who can look ahead to the AI team and the transfers that may be in the pipeline, Haaland may be on his way out soon. This is
Ooh,
what I've been told. Obviously not this week for Southampton at home,
yeah,
but the point where Haaland was at optimal when we wildcarded in game week 6 to get him in, that time is quickly running out, and you can see that in kind of the gap between him and Salah.
yeah,
And when you look at captaincy in the next few game weeks as well, it kind of becomes clear as well that maybe Haaland isn't justifying the extra, you know, 3 million over Salah.
yeah. Well, the difference now, I guess, in these 5 games is that the Wolves game from last week that's just happened has been replaced with Liverpool away in game week
Yes.
13. So you would expect some difference there, but I think overall the difference has come down as well because of what you've been saying. No big chance in the last 3. That does obviously, have an impact on his predicted points. I think it makes sense, right? I mean, Southampton at home is obviously a great fixture, but then the run after that, Bournemouth away, Brighton away, Spurs at home is probably pretty good. Then Liverpool away. He's 15.4 million. It's a lot. It's a lot of money. And yeah, you're right. When you're seeing Salah, very close to him in the predicted points, obviously actually now has a lot more points than him across the season. It is tempting to really change things around. And again, I guess it does come back to how you want to use your transfers to change around premiums. Let's then talk about everyone else. And Wood did well. He only got 1 goal, but quite a fortunate goal. But then he could have scored some other chances. I would say he was probably owed 1 goal in that game. But yeah, he's at the top of everyone else, and that's got to be good for owners.
Yeah, I mean, he's been so consistent, hasn't he? I think
Yeah,
he's got 3 goals in his last 4 as well. Probably one of his best periods of goal scoring form in the Premier League. And I did see that the Premier League actually posted today that only Erling Haaland and Cole Palmer have scored more league goals than Wood since when Nuno took over
oh wow.
as Forest manager. So that just goes to show that, this is perhaps sustainable, which is something that I've been a little bit on the fence on, but the AI has been really bullish on him. But if you take that under consideration, then, he is justifying those predicted points at the minute. Interestingly, we saw the news on Friday that Isak was back fit, and he came straight into the AI's
Yeah,
thinking in terms of predicted points and the transfers that the AI team made last week. And I know he didn't have an attacking return in the defeat to Brighton, but he was very involved in that game in terms of high shot volumes, doing all the right things. I know Newcastle have got tricky fixtures and quite a few away games coming up, but I do think Isak, particularly if Wilson remains kind of on the sidelines and more of a bit part, I think Isak could do very well still. Kuhn still there in the top 10, providing a budget option. He's dropped a little bit. I think, him and Strand Larson seem to be sharing the goals, and maybe it's Strand Larson that's got the edge at the moment.
yeah,
Raul Jimenez, his run of goal involvements is
amazing.
continuing, and suddenly he's in a lot of conversations within the FPL community at the moment as well.
Yeah, it's amazing to see with Jimenez, especially just like yeah, Wood is on 3 goals in 4 games. Jimenez on 4 goals in 5 games in the league. It's just like it's crazy. And I mean the thing is the stats with both of them are very good.
Yeah.
Like Jimenez at like 0.74 xG this week. Wood was at zero point 0.9. Isak as well was super high. Wood was at 0.82, sorry, and Isak was as well at like 0.81. So unlucky perhaps not to get a return. I just from watching the highlights, obviously had that one big chance which you normally would expect him to put away, but yeah, okay, that is it for the forwards. I think now let's have a look at the AI team, reveal how it did this week. Spoiler, did better than Holly and me, but we didn't do that well, to be fair. Realistically, it wasn't that hard. And then have a look at the transfers that it's potentially going to make for Game Week 9. Okay, Holly, here we are, Game Week 8 for the AI team. Can you just give a brief overview of what the AI team is, just for people who might not have watched the series before?
Yeah, so the AI team is based on Fantasy Football Hub's My Team tool. So we started with the recommended team at the start of the season, and each week we log into My Team and get our predicted points, recommended transfers, and optimize the lineup. So essentially, the computer picks the moves for us, and I just kind of gatekeep and log in and make the moves as suggested.
Yeah. Now, obviously, not had the well. I mean, it had a really good start to the season, but has fallen off a little bit. Um, Again, like a pretty average week this week, but as I said, better than me and you. Let's just run through the team in general, explain what the transfers were last week.
Yeah, so 42 points, it was above the average and a much needed green arrow. I think that's back-to-back green arrows now, which is encouraging. So last time when we spoke, the recommended move was Saliba to Vardiol, and the point swing on that this week
Wow.
has just been
Yeah.
incredible. So that absolutely paid off. Um, we was only making one free transfer, and then when I logged in on Friday to check the moves to set the team, it also recommended a second transfer of Watkins to Isak. So that obviously didn't pay off in the short term. So that kind of dented the gain from Vardiol. We have got a strong front eight, and we did actually bench Morgan Rogers. That was the recommendation was to play Semenyo over Rogers, which again I think we had a long conversation about last week. But the injury to Saka meant that Rogers auto subbed on, so there was a bit of a jam there from that, and obviously that Flecken 4-pointer was gratefully received in a week where the attacking returns were thin on the ground.
Yeah, that Flecken 4-pointer felt almost like a clean sheet, to be fair, in a week like this. But yeah, a decent week. It was interesting actually. Semenyo and Rogers both had pretty big chances in both of their games. So I think realistically both were pretty decent options this week, despite the fixture for Semenyo. Okay, let's have a look at how the team looks for Game Week 9. Okay, here we are. Team rating 96%, Game Week rating 95%. Very, very strong. As always, guys, if you would like to have a look at your own team and see how that is looking according to the AI sort of data, see your team rating and your Game Week rating, the link to sign up to Fantasy Football Hub is down below. You get a 7-day free trial right now as well. Immediately, there are some concerns in defence here, is what I can see. Robertson away at Arsenal is not an amazing fixture. And actually, right now, we're playing Faz against Forest at home.
Yeah, it's always nice to have a little bit of involvement in the first game of the game week, especially when you've got a rare Friday deadline and a
Yeah.
Friday night game. So yeah. I mean, we've got Fez against Wood, which doesn't feel good with Robertson on the bench, but it's just the way it has to be some weeks. This is why we've got a budget defender that can come in. We've obviously picked up that injury to Greaves as well. I think that hamstring injury, means that he's probably going to be out till the next international break, which gives us a little bit less flexibility in a week where you've got two of your defenders and two key teams facing off. At least we've got Vardiol though at home to Southampton, so we have
He'll
got
get 15. It's fine. That will carry the
we've
team.
got hope.
Yeah. Haaland captain is obvious really here. Saka is the interesting one, and now we can really see why he's, I think, still relatively high on those predicted points. 5.8, even with a flag at home to Liverpool, is strong, right? Comparatively to Burmo at home to Ipswich, who you'd think would be way higher. Saka's there, and then if that flag was removed, I'd expect him to go. Well, he would then go above Burmo in predicted points. So potentially don't need to transfer him out, but let's now have a look at what the transfers are saying. Okay, so here's a recommendation. Not a lot going on this screen at all. Simple. Bank your free transfer for this week. Looking at the team, I kind of agree with that. That's what I would do personally. What do you think?
Yeah, I guess it's just a situation with Saka, but with the way the AI team works, while that orange 75% flag is in place, Saka is a hold. But if that flag changes, for whatever reason, obviously we've got Arsenal involved in Champions League action midweek, then it could be the tipping point. The natural replacement for the AI for Saka would be Cole Palmer.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot can change in terms of what happens midweek to affect these moves, but at least we've got kind of that in the back of our minds when we're looking at setting up the team for this week.
Yeah, sorry, no, I said it was what I would do, but of course it massively depends on Saka news. And even then, I think that this week is a good entry week for Palmer. I don't think you'd do it next week. But
yeah,
there
is that as well. But also, again, because we've got that strong front eight, like if the flag didn't change on Saka, we've probably got Semenyo coming off the bench. Villa away, probably not the easiest fixture. I think Bournemouth have been struggling on the road, but Semenyo remains a massive goal threat. And, his shot volumes are way up there in terms of in comparison to other players right now. So he's a handy first sub to have if we need him.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Like the difference between the player you're bringing in and then the player that you would be benching. If it's not that much, then do you necessarily need to do it? It's tough because obviously Palmer is so explosive. But yeah, I'm interested to see what the AI ends up going with come Friday. And obviously, guys, if you want to see what it's going to do, then make sure to sign up down below. And Holly will lock that in as close to the deadline as possible. Or 4 o'clock on Friday, isn't it, that you normally do it?
Yeah, I need to be organised this week because it is a Friday deadline.
So I can't be missing that. I can't. Well, maybe if you want to roll, then yeah, exactly.
Like obviously, I ran the team last year, didn't miss a deadline, but it's always my biggest fear, especially when like you're out of your routine, like when something changes.
Yeah.
Like when we get to the busy festive period as well, and you don't know where the deadlines are. No. It's not always at the forefront of my mind.
Well, that's kind of a time when you need Fantasy Football Hub, to be fair, just to, if you're not sure and you're kind of, yeah, you're doing obviously festive stuff, whatever, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh my goodness, deadline's coming up, just have a look at that, and then hey, if you have to just go with it and not even think about it, I would say just do it. Anyway, that's going to do it for this one. Holly, thank you very much as always. Guys, if you want to continue to see who the top 10 players are in each position each game week, or when flags change, or when we get injury news throughout the week, etc., if Saka then loses his flag, see how that affects his predicted points, for example, then sign up to Fantasy Football Hub. Thank you, Holly, as always. And yeah, good luck this game week, and we'll catch you on the next one.